Alright, so I think I've covered all the fundamentals of storyboarding in Photoshop using the tabbing method. In this video, I'm just going to run through a bunch of miscellaneous essentials that I use all the time to maximize speed and efficiency. Just a quick note, I'm going to be saying to use the Command key a lot when talking about hotkeys. Switch that to Control if you're using Windows. It'll be the same thing. Alright, let's get to it. So this first one's really important. If you press V or select your Move tool, you'll see up at the toolbar there's this toggle for auto-selecting. What auto-selecting does is it allows you to click directly on the pixels of a layer and it'll select that layer in the layer menu. So watch this. If you uncheck auto-select and make sure the drop-down is set to layer, you can hold down Command and click on any of the pixels here and it'll select the layer that you clicked. If you check auto-select, you don't have to hold down Command. It'll just auto-select whatever layer you click the pixels of. The benefit of this is that instead of hunting around on the Layers panel for the layer you're trying to work on, you can just select it directly from your canvas. Okay, next up, I want to talk about how I do rim lights and shadows. So in video number 3 of this series, when I was talking about my hotkeys and my actions, I explained all about my fill white space behind action, which automatically puts a white matte behind my subject. And I talked about my new color layer action, which automatically adds a new layer on top of that white matte layer, which can then be used for quick coloring or shadows. But in addition to that, whenever I want to add a quick rim light on something, I have a few options. First is I can literally just select this color layer and move it to offset it a little bit. Just move it away from whatever direction the light is coming from and bam, rim light. Second option is if I want to add a rim light around the entire subject, I can just use the magic wand tool, then select everything but the subject. Then I go up to the select menu, then modify and then expand. I make the pixel size go up or down depending on how big I want the rim light to be and press OK. Now I'm selecting some of this shadow and all I have to do is either press delete or fill the selection with white. And now I have a rim light. So what about if I want to quickly add shadow on the side of something? First, I'll once again press my new color layer action. Then I choose the magic wand tool and click anywhere inside the new color layer. And now I can shift this to whatever direction I want, press delete, and suddenly it leaves a shadow on the edge of this character. Obviously, this is a little imperfect, but it's still good if you're just boarding quick and dirty. And while we're on the subject of the new color layer, we should talk about the Hue Saturation sliders. Let's pretend again that I just pressed my new color layer action. If I press Command U, it'll bring up the Hue and Saturation window. And I can just press Tab twice to select the lightness slider. Then if I hold down Shift and press the up or down arrow keys, I can quickly change the lightness or darkness of my layer. I can also select the Colorize checkbox to turn this gray into a color layer. Then I just press Shift and Tab to navigate back up to the Saturation or Hue sliders, and I can adjust from there. Or I can also just grab my mouse and start sliding that way. Alright, now I'm going to show you some hotkeys that I use for changing blending modes. So the first is, while on the Move tool, holding down Alt and Shift while pressing plus or minus will cycle through the blending modes on your layer. Same thing if you're on the Brush tool, or if you're on the Fill tool. Just hold down Alt and Shift, and then press plus or minus to cycle through the blending modes. And then remember that pressing Alt-Shift-N will return it to normal blending mode, Alt-Shift-Q will make it behind mode, Alt-Shift-M will change it to multiply, and Alt-Shift-O will make it overlay. You can also find hotkeys for a bunch of other blending modes by just holding down Alt-Shift and then pressing a bunch of random letters on the keyboard, but those 4 are the ones that I tend to use. Okay, now here's a quick one about copying and pasting. We all know copy is Command-C and paste is Command-V, but this just pastes your selection smack dab into the center of your canvas. However, if you press Command-Shift-V, it'll do what's called paste in place, which matches the location to be the same as what's in the source canvas. But like I explained in video number 3 of this series, paste in place will only paste the pixels. Another option is to go up to the layer menu, then duplicate layer, and then select the canvas you want to duplicate the layer to. Doing this will also copy over all the layer modifications. So it'll maintain the original opacity, blending mode, and any layer effects you have on the layer. One more option for copying and pasting layer effects is by right-clicking on the layer name, then clicking Copy Layer Style. Now you can go to your destination layer, right-click, and press Paste Layer Style. And it'll copy over your opacity, blending mode, and whatever layer effects that are on the layer. Alright, now let's talk about the Transform tool. I think most people are already aware that pressing Command-T will bring up the free transform box. And I use this all the time to make quick changes. If I want to make this little bunny stretch up and down, I just drag the top handle and pull it up. Then if I hold down Alt and drag the side handles, it'll squish them or stretch them equally from both sides. If I hold down Command, I can grab onto any of these handles and skew the selection. And this makes making quick little additional poses or whatever else you need really easy. But the other big transformation function I use all the time is Transform Again. If you're not familiar with it, here are the basics of how Transform Again works. As long as you use the free transform function to scale, rotate, or move a selection, you can use the Transform Again function to repeat that previous transformation. And by the way, the hotkey for Transform Again is just Command-Shift-T. So watch, I just have to press Command-Shift-T to repeat that exact same transformation again. Let me show you an example. I'm going to animate this square, and I'm going to make it tilt and fall over using only Transform and Transform Again. First thing I'll do, just for fun, is I'll give this square a little squash as an antic, a little motivation for the action. And then I'll duplicate the first panel as a basis for my third panel. And then on this third panel, I'll start my rotation. So I'll press Command-T to bring up my free transform box, and I'm going to have it rotate around the bottom right corner of the square. The way I'll do this is by moving the pivot point of the transform tool, which is this little crosshair anchor thing. You can grab the pivot point and move it around that way, or you can also hold down Alt and click anywhere to snap it to your cursor. I'm going to grab it and drag it because when you do that, it snaps to any of these handles, including this corner. So I'll have the square start to rotate by maybe 5 degrees. And then for the next panel, I'll press Transform Again. I'll do it 5 times. And I want to make it slow in and slow out at the apex here. So on this next panel, I'll just press it twice. I'm going to duplicate the panel, and then I'll press it once. Then on the next panel, I'll press it once. And then on the next panel, I'll press it once more. And then on the next panel, I'm going to press it twice, and then 5 times. And then to finish it off, I'll make it squash and give it a little settle. So I'll just transform these sides here, settle up a tiny bit. Okay, there we go. Cute little animation, right? All using the Transform Again tool. Now that I've explained how Transform Again basically works, I can show you how I use it to do camera moves so that they have a precise and consistent trajectory. So let's say we've got the shot here, and we're going to dramatically zoom in on these 2 squares. The simplest way to do this is just by duplicating the panels and then transforming all the layers from each panel sort of straight ahead. But if we go back and flip through these, it's a little messed up. Like the arcs aren't smooth, and the zoom speed is maybe less precise than I'd usually want it, all because I was eyeballing it. And I definitely can go in and fiddle around until it's right, but I found that the more complicated the camera move, the harder it is to fix it after the fact. So instead, I'm going to use Transform Again to have much more control and precision over the zoom. So in this first panel, I'll select all the layers, then I'll just scale up a little bit, maybe 10%. For the next panel, I'm just going to press Transform Again once, and then the next panel, I'll press it 3 times, and then for the final panel, I'll press it once, and then we're done. There, look how much more precise and accurate that zoom is. I know it's a little crazy to do camera moves this way, but it's probably just personal preference. If you don't want to do it this way, you can just eyeball it and you'll probably get by just fine. Oh, and if you're in the middle of a Transform Again sequence and you accidentally transform something else, you will lose the transformation that you were in the middle of, right? Luckily, there's a pretty easy way to get it back. The way you get it back is just by taking a pair of your previous panels, as long as they contain the rate of transformation that you want to get back, and then choose the first panel from that pair, and press Command-A to select everything. Then press Command-Shift-C. This is known as Copy Merged, which basically means it'll copy a flattened version of everything that's visible. And then you go to the next panel and press Command-Shift-V to paste in place, turn down the opacity, and then transform this merged overlay until it matches the pixels on your current panel. And now you can once again keep pressing Transform Again at the same rate. Okay, now I'm going to go through some real fast hotkeys about our Layers panel. Most of these are pretty common knowledge, but I'll speed through them anyway, just in case. Starting with the basics. Pressing Command-Shift-N will create a new layer. Alt-left bracket or Alt-right bracket navigates through the layers. Holding down Alt-N-Shift and pressing the left or right brackets will navigate through the layers while multi-selecting them. If you press Alt-comma, it'll jump to the bottommost visible layer of your stack. If you press Alt-period, it'll jump to the topmost visible layer of your stack. Alt-Shift-comma will select everything visible from your current layer to the bottom. And Alt-Shift-period will do the same thing, except it'll select everything up to the top instead. Holding down Command and pressing the left or right bracket will move the selected layers up and down the stack. Holding down Command and Shift and pressing the left or right brackets will move the selected layers all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom of the stack. Pressing Command and G while having layers selected will put them in a group. Pressing Command-Shift-G while a group is selected will ungroup the layers. And then here's a custom one that I just started using a couple years ago, the Rename Layer hotkey. To set it, you go up to the Edit menu, and then Keyboard Shortcuts. Make sure Application Menus is selected in the dropdown. Scroll down and expand the Layer group, and then scroll down until you get to Rename Layer. It also might say Rename Group. Change it to whatever hotkey you want. I did Alt-Shift-Command-R. Now, if I want to quickly organize my layers, I can do it without ever touching the mouse. I can select layers, I can select multiple layers, I can move them up and down, I can group them, rename the group the other layers, move those up and down. For me, not having to touch the mouse means that I can just do all this stuff much quicker. Maybe it just saves a few seconds here or there, but that really adds up, especially if I'm speeding towards a deadline. Oh, here's one final layer hotkey that's really useful. Pressing the / key will lock or unlock the pixel transparency on a layer. So let's say I've got a white matte behind something. If I lock the transparent pixels, I can only draw on top of the pixels that are already there. If I unlock the transparent pixels, I can draw anywhere on the layer again. All right, I know this is kind of a lot of information coming at you, and this is already a very long video, so I'll just talk about one last thing. And that is how I use tabbing to do something repetitive very quickly. Here's an example of something I need to do all the time. Let's say I have this background layer on all these panels, and I want to select it, rename it to background, and move it to the bottom of my layer stack. The first step is to select all of my background layers in these panels. So I'm going to do that by hovering my mouse over the pixels of the background layer. Then with my left hand, I'll Control-Tab through all my panels. With my right hand on the mouse, without moving the cursor, I'll just click the mouse button in order to auto-select the layer. So I'll just press Control-Tab and then click. Control-Tab and then click. Control-Tab and then click. Do that over and over again until I've selected all of my background layers in all of my panels. It's actually pretty quick. Now here comes the second step, which is to create a temporary action and assign it to some hotkey that I don't use. For now, I'll just use F11. Now, on one panel, I press record and I perform the sequence of actions that I want to occur. I press my rename layer hotkey, Command-Alt-Shift-R, and I type background. Press enter. Then I press Command-Shift left bracket in order to move the background layer all the way to the bottom of the layer stack. Finally, I press save, and I press Control-Tab to advance to the next panel. Then I press stop on my action, and I can hit play on that action over and over again, and it'll do everything I need for me, including saving and advancing to the next panel. All right, and I am done. And that's generally how I do repetitive actions in a way that's quick and easy. All right, I'm pretty sure this series now contains most of my knowledge of how I use Photoshop to storyboard. There's always a chance I'll release another video or two, but for now, this should be it. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.